Tap 3 mana, ice cream with banana. Now our problem solved.
Okay, kids, gather around towards story time again. This story is about the time I got a Mox Ruby at Peacock Cove in the Magic the Gathering Two-Headed Giant tournament. So before I talk about the tournament, just to talk about what Two-Headed Giant is. Two-Headed Giant is a giant with two heads, one body, two legs. Two heads talk to each other, tell each other what to do, but in the end, it only has two arms and two legs in which to walk. So it's kind of like two people just acting as one. So you're bonded together and you have to fight that way. A two-headed giant in Magic means that it's two players against two players. And defeating one player doesn't mean it's the end of the tournament. Defeating one player means that one player fights against two players. And I have seen a game of Two-Headed Giant 1 where one head gets knocked out, or one player gets knocked out, and the second player remaining manages to take out both of the opposing players. Yeah, Amy has her mouth open. Yeah. In this format, it's four players. Each of them have 20 life, sitting opposite from each other. Sort of like a four-player game of Magic, except you have to sit opposite of each other. You can talk to each other about what cards you have in your hand. Although, if you show your hand to your opponent, you show your hand to your friend. Let me say that again. If you show your hand to your friend, you show your hand to your opponent. And you can trash talk. You can just say, oh yeah, I got a counterspell in my hand. You go ahead and play that card. You know, you may not have a counterspell in your hand. You can't see your opponent's hand. Not working together in those days. Around 9th edition tournament, I found Wizard of the Coast actually gave the rules for Two-Headed Giant. It was much different. Players took their turns and phases at the same time. So both players would draw a card at the same time. Both players would attack at the same time. This was a different time then. This was after multiplayer Magic was declared. Magic the Gathering was supposed to be a one-on-one game. And a lot of cards like Winter Orb just says, your opponent. It doesn't say your opponent or your opponents. They always expected you to have one opponent. So somewhere a couple years into Magic the Gathering, they had to errata a couple of cards to say things completely different. The Aura of Silence says that artifacts and enchantments cause your opponent two more to cast. Now it says your opponents, plural. It got stronger. Some cards didn't really matter. Just Howling Mine just says at the beginning of each player's draw a step, they draw an extra card. So yeah, this was a kind of a newish time in Magic the Gathering. This was during Onslaught Odyssey block, or around the 7th and 8th year of Magic the Gathering. We're now in the 25th year, starting this month. Magic the Gathering's 25 years old. So if you do the math, this was about 17 years ago. Yeah. So starting out with a deck, I'm playing Reanimator. This is a different kind of archetype of Reanimator, and it's not something I've ever seen before. First off, it's 4-color Reanimator. It's everything except for white. It has green for mulch, blue for card draw and discard, black for reanimating spells, and red for using creature abilities. So 4-color deck is really hard. It's my first 4-color deck I ever made. I don't think I made another 4-color deck afterwards. It's really hard when you construct a deck to create a 4-color deck, because your deck is kind of like an essay. Like you're writing a story about what you want to happen. And every single paragraph or page in your essay would be, say a color in your deck and what that color is supposed to do. So if you want to have a black and white deck, black and white are opposing colors. In real life, they're like yin and yang. They're kind of like yin and yang in Magic too. So if you want to have a deck with both black and white, you need to defend yourself on why you want these two colors together and how they can cooperate with each other when they're supposed to do such opposite things. So 4-color deck is wild. To get how wild Reanimator is, I've seen this done one time. The very first minute of Magic, I told you, Amy, you're supposed to play a land. You play your very first land. And Reanimator, you can do this. You can draw your hand, it has land in it, and you can just say, oh, I forgot to play a land. Go. And your second turn, oh, I forgot to play a land. Discard a giant card. Go. And I've had so many players smile at me saying, I don't believe you. I don't believe you've kept a 0 land hand. You can't possibly have done this. And you're right. Reanimator can keep a hand with land in it, not play a land on his first turn, going against every single thing anyone's told you the very first minute of Magic the Gathering. You can ignore in Reanimator. It's such an odd concept. It's not always a good idea, even in Reanimator, but you can do it. So that's how wacky this deck is. And this deck, I called it 13-13-13. And it's because it has 13 sources of reanimating creatures, 13 creatures, and 13 ways of drawing cards. So let's see if 13 really is an unlucky number. So first off, there's the Reanimator deck. The card draw we have is Careful Study. Card from Odyssey. Draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards from your hand. It's kind of like in poker where you just say, oh, like a 5 card draw or 7 card draw, where you're like, oh, I don't like these cards. You know, you Careful Study gets rid of the cards in your hand. And Careful Study, you know, it's a card in itself. So if you put a card in your graveyard and you draw 2 cards and you put 2 cards in the graveyard, that's 3 cards in the graveyard and 2 cards in your hand. It's card disadvantage. It doesn't follow Magic Theory because it's -1 card advantage. You're basically taking a mulligan, and yet the deck still works. Yeah. Here's Mulch. Reveal the top 4 cards of the library to all players. Put any of the cards that are lands into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. This is the best card to get cards in your graveyard of all. Because Mulch, I've had it where I've drawn 4 lands or 3 lands, and on turn 2, and you have like 9 cards in your hand, and then you just discard the creature cards, and you draw 4 lands. I've had that happen. I've had Mulch happen, and you don't get any lands. But you get creature cards in your graveyard, and you already have 2 mana for Mulch. And guess what? A lot of reanimation cards cost 2. Frantic Search. What a terrible picture. There we go. Urza's Legacy. My favorite set in all of Magic the Gathering. Draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, untap up to 3 lands. Really simple idea. Throwing cards in your graveyard to reanimate those creatures later. This card was banned so hard. Basically, most of the untapped spells, free spells, were banned in Magic the Gathering. Time Spiral was banned. Frantic Search got banned. Cloud of Furies got banned many years later. Peregrine Shrike got banned. It's a mess. Here's the creatures we got. Now, these days, the best creature of all is Gristlebrand, because you can pay 7 life and draw 7 cards. And the cards I just told you about, they draw you 2 cards, and then you have to discard cards. And Gristlebrand can draw 7 cards. So Gristlebrand is just overpowered. We didn't have that kind of power, but look at Petrodon. When it comes into play, remove 2 target lands from the game. And I've told you that a lot of reanimation cards cost 2 mana. So, conceivably, you could, turn 1, Careful Study away a Petrodon. Turn 2, reanimate a Petrodon. And your opponent only has 2 lands in play, and Petrodon just gets rid of both of them. So if your opponent had a 3 mana removal spell, your opponent will never cast it. Because it's a 5/6 creature with pumpable power. It'll just attack for 7, attack for 7, attack for 7. Your opponent's dead. Wins the game all by itself. This is what a beautiful card. It's from Torment. Completely forgotten. Well, 8 mana card, mind you. The point of Petrodon was that, you know, the ability matches the body, but you know, how often do you get 8 lands in Magic the Gathering? Besides limited, when you're mana flooded. What an amazing card. Avatar of Woe. What a terrible picture. From Prophecy. If there are 10 or more creature cards in total in all graveyard, it costs 6 less to play. If you're playing, say, 2 Reanimator decks, you can get 10 creature cards in your graveyard. Unfortunately, we didn't have that many Avatars of Woe. I just got 2 Avatar of Woes, actually. But tap, destroy target creature can't be regenerated. You can put your opponent on lockdown. Or you could it can't be blocked except for black creatures and artifact creatures. You can just sneak in for last a few damage and take out a head and two-headed giant. Bloodfire Colossus. It's a 6/6 for 8, and it can explode, do 6 damage to each creature and player. Katie's just watering the piano. I don't know if you saw that. We'll watch her. We'll watch her. Spirit of the Night is the best card in Reanimator at this point. Like I said, this is the 7th and 8th year of Magic the Gathering. There were better creatures. There were Raid Dawnbringer came out, was pretty good. The original Spirit of the Night. It's 6/5. It's unaffected by Summoning Sickness. And these days, its keyword ability is Haste. Means you can attack the turn it comes into play. And a lot of people say, you know, just because you have a 9-mana card doesn't mean it's good. Because there are bad 9-mana creatures in Magic the Gathering, like Colossus Sardia. But the thing is, and a lot of people said this in Oath of Druids decks, is a 6/5 with haste is like a 9/9 without haste. Because the Spirit of the Night, you can play it and you can attack for 6. Next turn you attack for 6, and next turn you attack for 6 and your opponent's dead. But say if you had a 9/9, you can't put it into play, it has Summoning Sickness, and you don't attack. And then the next turn you attack for 9, and the next turn you attack for 9. In both cases, you do 18 damage to your opponent, and it takes the exact same amount of time, but the Spirit of the Night deals the first 6 damage first. So if your opponent is at very low life total, say 6 or less, Spirit of the Night would kill your opponent immediately, whereas a 9/9 creature would still take a turn to lose Summoning Sickness. Awesome. So here's the mana base. It is absolutely insane. We have Taiga, a dual land from Revised. Green-red. We have black-blue. Underground Seas, Tropical Island, Bayou. And we had some Volcanic Islands. What a terrible picture. Volcanic Islands, just to activate the ability from Bloodfire Colossus, which had to happen sometimes. Occasionally I'd find an elf deck, and I'd reanimate the creature, and the elf deck's on the verge of killing me. We just have to blow up Bloodfire Colossus, not even attack the opponent, just to wipe the whole board. It just had to happen. Badland, for some reason, we have
Tap
8
3
Badlands.
mana, Ice Cream with
open from
Banana.
packs. I
Now
have
our
no
problem
idea.
solved.
Don't play this deck if you have 3 people in your family, because we only had about 50 dual lands. So this deck takes out like 20 of them in the deck, because it's a 4-color deck. It needs its mana badly. It needs its green for mulch. It needs its red to activate Bloodfire Colossus. So if you were to play this deck these days, it'd be thousands of dollars. Yeah. Amy's a little bug-eyed now. These are reanimation cards. Dance of the Dead, completely forgotten card. It puts a creature into play with +1/+1, and it costs an upkeep of 1 black. But you know, that's just the that was just the menu we had in those days. You'd only need 1 creature to win anyway, in case of, say, Spirit of the Night. Animate Dead, the original Animate Dead card. Hey, it puts a creature in play with -1 to its original power, which is -1/-0. Necromancy had some really strange wording to it. I actually cast it as an instant once. Say if there's a Bloodfire Colossus in your graveyard, you can kind of like Necromancy into play and see if your opponent casts an overrun, tries to kill you. In response, Necromancy, Bloodfire Colossus, explode the whole board. Here's a really weird one. Victimize. I had 1 Victimize. Choose 2 creature cards in your graveyard. Sacrifice a creature if you do. Put the 2 chosen creatures into play tapped. So it's like a double reanimator, but you have to have a creature in play. So it made it kind of hard to play. You could use maybe a Sakura Tribe Elder to victimize it. But those didn't come to later. There's just no good targets for it. Then I had to reanimate. The only reanimation spell that costs 1 black mana in all of Magic the Gathering is still true. You lose life equal to the creature's total casting cost. So, ouch, it hurt dearly. And it's actually probably good I didn't invest in Tempest in those days, since I could probably have a hand of like 3 or 4 reanimates They wouldn't be helpful because I'd be dead by the time I cast the fourth one, even if the opponent did nothing to me. So I didn't have all the cards in the deck. I didn't have enough Avatar of Woes. So this is the only time in my whole life I had to borrow cards from other players. So I chose my friend Mike. So Mike, can I have your Avatar of Woes? I had a ton of Prophecy, but I just didn't buy singles, and I only had one. So we built the deck. We played two-headed giant. You go up against Dan and his son Stu in the finals, and it's the first time I've ever seen a card played Snake Basket. Do you have an idea Snake Basket does? It's 4 mana and it produces X11 tokens when it comes into play. Horrible card. From Visions. It was kicking our butt. Somehow. I know, this is really dumb. We had to cast Twilight's Call. Twilight's Call is a really... We had one Twilight's Call in the deck. What a terrible picture. It is a gigantic reanimation card. 6 mana, it reanimates everything. And I'm like, Michael Monroe, this is our only chance. You have a Twilight's Call. And he's like, yes. Let's play it. And Stu's eyes like lit up. What's Twilight's Call? What's Twilight's Call? What's Twilight's Call? And Mike, he had Asperger's, so he had to think a lot. Figure out which card in his hand was Twilight's Call. Scared our opponents to death. We ended up Twilight's Calling. We still ended up losing the match. Did get to see some nice tricks though. I got to see one of my favorite pet combos now, which is Elvish Archer Rancor. Elvish Archer is a 2/1 first strike. It's a rare. It should not be a rare. It really shouldn't. But green's never supposed to have first strike. And then you combine Elvish Archers with Rancor. Why is Caps Lock on? Rancor is a card from Urza's Legacy. Favorite set once again. Creature gets +2/+0 and trample. So you have 2/1 first strike. It gets +2/+0. It's a 4/1 first strike trample. 3 mana. What a cool trick. Anyway, ended up losing. Made me really sad. So Adam is sorting his cards in the tournament. He has a Mox Ruby. And I'm like, hey, Adam, what do you want for your Mox Ruby? He says $100. I have no idea why he said it. It's a piece of the Power 9. Power 9 were $300 each. So I'm like, sure. So I got Mox Ruby. That was the first piece of Power 9 I ever had. And eventually I ended up getting a Mox Ruby, Mox Sapphire, Mox Jet, 2 Library of Alexandrias, which are like the 10th piece of the Power 9. It's supposed to be 9 cards. So this was the story of my journey to playing Vintage. Even though it was the end of playing Two-Headed Giant for me. So that's the story for the day.
Thanks for watching the video. Please remember to like and subscribe. And if you want a notification, click the bell icon below. If you really like it, share with your friends. And if you really like it, give Dan Horning money on Patreon. And give me money. I love money. Do all the things. Cast mind run on yourself.